Though each piece of literature carries a different message, the shared methods in which those messages get delivered makes all the difference. Writers often use a series of literary devices to express their ideas, emotions, or to clarify concepts, especially in poetry. And as a student currently taking a poetry course, I've recently learned a lot more about these devices that you can use within literature and the effects that they have. By making comparisons and using sound devices, along with varying structures in poetry, you can convey emotion and tell stories in a way that other types of literature lacking these devices may not be able to. So firstly, comparisons come in many forms. Oftentimes you see metaphors, similes, juxtaposition, along with many others. These allow writers to add emphasis or clarify points or to just show appreciation for different topics. An example from my class would be this poem by Etheridge Knight, which she used comparison to show emphasis of her points. She put the negative effects of society at the top, along with following it with like the easy things in our society, just to emphasize the contrast between those and make people think about the way our world is. Another very common use of comparisons is to clarify something that may be hard to grasp. By putting something that is familiar to people next to something that may not be familiar, it allows people to identify with that thing and allows the readers to use their prior knowledge to further their connection within the poem. There's also many ways to utilize sound in writing as well. The most common sound device is usually rhyme, and there's alliteration, dissonance, and consonance. Rhyming is usually easy to recognize in literature, therefore it usually adds a nice rhythm and obvious emphasis within the poem. As for consonance, alliteration, and assonance, they all deal with the repetition of individual letters within the literature. Consonance is the repetition of the consonants. Assonance is the repetition of the vowels, and alliteration is repetition of the same letter over and over within a poem. Also, the structure in which the piece is written also adds a lot to it. Poems are written in lines and stanzas, so they don't have paragraphs, but these can vary depending on the tone, the topic, and the goal of the writer, and you can pretty much do whatever with these. Lines can either end at the end of a natural thought, or they can also end in the middle of one, which is called the enjambment. By having line breaks at its natural place, it adds a nice flow to it and reads more smoothly, rather than having your lines cut short. It adds a little bit of, it might make you stumble over your words and think about it a little bit more. Stanzas can also be changed to fit the goal of the poem. Some writers have many stanzas, some just use one, and these are the paragraphs in poetry. By experimenting with different ways to organize the poem, you might find it has a different effect, or you like one more than the original way. I also have an example for this one. I have the original poem at the top, which was written in one stanza, and it doesn't really have lines that end, it's just one big paragraph. And then right here, I rearranged it for the element of surprise, and if you read through it this way, it adds a little bit more mystery, and it stops the lines in places where you may have questions or you may be surprised by the following lines or words in the poem. But in conclusion, the ways to write are endless, but by applying these different literary devices, you can add a lot within a piece of writing and alter it completely almost. And as many of you are students, I'm sure you'll come across at least a few of these within your education. But by making comparisons using sound devices and varying structures, poetry conveys emotion and tells stories in ways that other types of literature may not if they are lacking these devices. Thank you.